A billionaire who swore he'd never trust his new maid, a quiet woman with too many secrets and a past that didn't quite add up, until one night she did something that would change everything forever. Welcome to Stories Hub. Make sure you like and subscribe for your top-notch stories. Let us know in the comments section where you're watching from and what time you are currently watching this video. Richard Hale wasn't the kind of man who let strangers into his life easily. When you're worth billions, you learn to suspect everyone. Every smile feels fake, every compliment feels like a setup, and every new person feels like a threat to what you've built. So when his longtime maid of 15 years retired, Richard wasn't happy about hiring someone new. But life didn't give him a choice. His 10-year-old son, Lucas, needed someone around the house when Richard was away at work, and Richard was away a lot. That's how Eleanor showed up at the Hale mansion. Mid-20s, sharp eyes, and a quiet way about her that Richard didn't like. She answered questions politely, never said too much about herself, and seemed almost watchful. Sutton. From day one, Richard felt something was off. She moved through the house like she'd been there forever, knew where everything was too quickly, and Lucas, who didn't warm up to people easily, liked her right away. That alone was enough to bother him. "Dad, she makes the best sandwiches," Lucas had said on her second day, smiling from ear to ear as he sat at the massive kitchen island. Richard had only nodded, his jaw tight as he watched Elena wiping down the counters. She was fast, precise, almost like she'd been trained to do this. That night, Richard sat in his study, scrolling through her background check for the 100th time. It all seemed clean, too clean. No parking tickets, no old addresses that didn't match, no family listed except a grandmother who had passed away 2 years earlier. So, it was almost as if Elena had no past before she applied for the job. He wasn't going to say anything yet, not until he had proof, but he made a mental note to keep a closer eye on her. The following evening, Richard returned home late from a meeting and heard voices coming from Lucas's room. His heart skipped. He hated the idea of strangers near his son when he wasn't home. Quietly, he walked upstairs and peeked into Lucas's room. Elena was sitting cross-legged on the floor, showing Lucas how to assemble a small Lego car. She didn't notice Richard watching. Lucas laughed loudly as the car broke apart in his hands, scattering pieces across the carpet. Eleanor chuckled softly and said, "That's okay. We'll build it again. Sometimes starting over makes it stronger." Richard stayed there for a few seconds longer before stepping away. There was something about the way she said it that stuck with him. 2 nights later, everything changed. Richard had been sitting in his study again when he heard the sound of tires screeching outside the mansion gates. He looked up, frowning. It was nearly 9 p.m., too late for deliveries. Then came the sound of shouting. Richard ran to the security monitors and saw 2 masked men forcing their way through the outer gate. His blood ran cold. He grabbed the phone to call security, but before he could dial, he heard Lucas scream from upstairs. Richard dropped the phone and bolted for the staircase. Halfway up, he nearly collided with Eleanor, who was already running toward Lucas's room. "Stay back!" he yelled, but she didn't stop. The next moments blurred together. Lucas crying, glass shattering downstairs, heavy boots on the marble floor. Richard's heart was pounding as he pushed Lucas behind him, grabbing the baseball bat from under the bed. Then they heard it. Footsteps, fast, coming down the hall. And Elena. She didn't look scared. She looked ready. Before we dive in deeply, let us know in the comments what country or which city you're watching this story from. We'd love to know how far this story travels. The hallway went silent for a split second. Then, bang! The sound of a door slamming downstairs echoed through the house. Lucas clung to Richard's leg, shaking, his small hands gripping tight. "Elena, take Lucas to the safe room," Richard barked, his voice low but urgent. But she didn't move. Instead, Eleanor grabbed Lucas's arm and crouched low, her eyes darting toward the hallway corner, like she was listening for something. "Who are you?" Richard hissed, staring at her in disbelief. "Not now," she shot back, her voice sharp, steady, almost commanding. "We don't have time for questions." Richard's jaw clenched, but he didn't argue. The sound of boots thudding up the staircase snapped him back into focus. "Go!" he yelled. Elena moved fast, pulling Lucas with her down the hall. Richard followed, gripping the bat tighter, his heart pounding against his ribs. The safe room was hidden behind a bookshelf in the master bedroom. Richard pressed his hand against the sensor, but before the door could slide open, a gunshot exploded somewhere behind them. Lucas screamed. Elena shoved the boy into Richard's arms. "Take him inside. Lock the door." "What about you?" Richard shouted. But she was already moving back toward the hallway, her long hair swinging behind her as she grabbed a heavy brass lamp from the nightstand like it was a weapon. Richard cursed under his breath. This was insane. He had no idea who these people were or why they were targeting his house. But now Eleanor was running straight toward them. "Dad!" Lucas cried, pulling Richard toward the safe room. Oh, another shot rang out, this one closer. Richard's survival instincts kicked in. He pushed Lucas inside and sealed the door. The panic room was lined with steel, soundproof with security feeds on one wall. Richard quickly scanned the monitors. Elena was on camera, crouched behind the hallway banister, waiting. The first intruder came into view, a tall man dressed in black holding a pistol with a silencer. Before Richard could process what he was seeing, Eleanor lunged forward. She swung the brass lamp hard, smashing it against the man's wrist. The gun flew across the hallway, and the man grunted in pain, stumbling backwards. Richard's eyes widened. He had never seen anyone move that fast. But there was another man behind him, this one carrying a shotgun. Elena didn't hesitate. She dove toward the first man, knocking him down just as the second man fired. The blast ripped through the wall where she had been standing seconds earlier. Richard's hands were shaking as he watched, torn between running out to help and staying locked inside to protect Lucas. "Is she going to die?" Lucas whispered, his voice trembling. Richard couldn't answer. On the monitor, Eleanor rolled to the side, grabbed the first man's pistol and pointed it at the second man. "Drop it!" she shouted. For a moment, the hallway froze. Then the second man laughed low and mocking and started to raise his shotgun again. Elena fired. The man fell, Lucas gasped, covering his mouth with both hands. Richard didn't move, his brain racing. Who was this woman? The first man was still struggling on the floor. Elena kicked his weapon away and pressed the pistol against his temple. Who sent you?" she demanded. The man just spat at her feet. Before Elena could say anything else, another voice shouted from downstairs, angry, loud, "Fall back, we're not done yet!" The man on the floor scrambled to his feet and bolted toward the stairs. Elena fired again, but he was gone before the bullet hit. Richard watched her stand there, breathing hard, her hands shaking slightly as she lowered the pistol. Then she turned toward the master bedroom, her eyes looking straight on the camera as if she knew Richard was watching. She mouthed two words that made Richard's stomach twist. "They'll return." Richard unlocked the safe room door and stepped out, still gripping the bat. Lucas stayed inside, clutching a blanket, his eyes wide with fear. "Elena!" Richard hissed. She didn't even look at him at first. She was still scanning the hallway, gun in hand, like she expected someone to jump out at any second. "They'll be back," she said again, her voice firm, but there was a trace of something in it now. Worry. Richard's throat was dry. "What do you mean, they'll be back? Who are they? Why are they coming after my house?" Elena finally turned to face him. Her hair was a mess, her shirt splattered with dust from the wall the shotgun had ripped through. "I'll explain later," she said. "Right now we need to secure the house. Do you have more weapons?" Richard blinked. He had a full panic room, a dozen security guards on call, and top-of-the-line cameras. He wasn't used to being asked if he had more weapons. "In my study," he said slowly. "Good. Go get them, and stay low." Before he could ask another question, she was already moving down the hallway, quick and quiet. Richard ran to the study, yanking open the locked drawer where he kept a handgun he hadn't used in years. His hands were shaking so badly he nearly dropped it. He could hear Elena's footsteps moving through the house as she checked each room. Every sound made Richard's pulse spike. The creak of the floorboards, the faint hum of the security system, even the wind against the windows outside. Then he heard her call out, "Clear downstairs!" For a moment there was silence. And then the house phone rang. Richard jumped so hard he almost fired the gun. He picked up the receiver, his heart pounding. No one spoke. Just breathing. Slow, steady breathing on the other end. Richard slammed the phone down. "Elena!" he shouted. She appeared in the doorway seconds later, her pistol still in her hand. "What happened?" "They called," Richard said, his voice tight. "Whoever they are, they're watching us." Eleanor's jaw clenched. She looked toward the window, then back at him. "Then we don't have much time." "Much time for what?" "To get your son somewhere safe." Before Richard could respond, the security alarm blared. Eleanor cursed under her breath and sprinted to the security monitors. Richard followed and felt his stomach drop when he saw the screen. 4 black SUVs had pulled up just outside the gates. "They brought backup," Eleanor said grimly. The SUV's doors opened almost in unison. More men in black poured out, some carrying rifles. Richard's breath caught. This wasn't a random robbery. This was a coordinated attack. "Why are they doing this?" Richard asked, his voice rising. Elena didn't look at him. "Because of you. Someone wants to hurt you, and they don't care if they have to go through Lucas to do it." Richard's blood went cold. "Get Lucas," Elena ordered. "We're moving him to the garage. There's a back exit they won't expect." Richard didn't even argue this time. He ran to the safe room and grabbed his son, who was crying quietly now. "Dad, are they going to kill us?" Lucas whispered. Richard forced a smile he didn't feel. "Not if I can help it." When they reached the garage, Elena was already there, loading a shotgun she had taken from the weapons cabinet. She nodded toward Richard's SUV. "Drive, I'll cover you." Richard's heart pounded. He had never been in anything like this before, and now he was supposed to drive straight past armed men. The sound of shattering glass from the front of the house made up his mind. He shoved Lucas into the back seat and started the engine. Elena threw open the garage door and stepped outside, pistol raised. "Go!" she shouted. The night exploded into chaos. Shouts from outside, gunfire cracking through the dark. Elena firing back as Richard floored the gas pedal and the SUV shot forward into the driveway. Through the rearview mirror, Richard saw Elena still standing there, firing at the men who were trying to block their escape. She wasn't running. She was buying them time. The SUV roared down the driveway, tires screeching as Richard swerved hard to avoid the men trying to block his path. Bullets pinged against the side of the vehicle, one shattering the passenger mirror. Lucas screamed and ducked, covering his ears. Stay down," Richard yelled, gripping the wheel so tightly his knuckles turned white. Behind them, the mansion glowed with flashes of gunfire. Richard risked one quick glance in the rearview mirror. Elena was still at the gate, firing with brutal precision, moving between cover like she'd done this 100 times before. "Who is she?" Richard muttered under his breath. The gate splintered under the force of a truck slamming through it. More men poured into the property. Richard floored the gas, pushing the SUV to its limits as he sped down the long driveway toward the main road. Just when he thought they were clear, headlights appeared behind them. 2 of the black SUVs had broken off and were now chasing him. "Dad, they're coming!" Lucas shouted from the back seat. Richard gritted his teeth. "I see them." The SUVs closed in fast, their engines growling. One swerved to the left, trying to cut Richard off. He jerked the wheel sharply, barely missing a tree, as the SUV bounced onto the grass. "Hold on!" he yelled as the vehicle jolted violently. The road ahead curved sharply, and Richard took it, at a speed that nearly sent them off the pavement. Lucas cried out, gripping the back of Richard's seat. Then a gunshot cracked from behind. The rear window shattered, glass spraying across the seats. Richard ducked instinctively, swerving again. His heart was hammering so hard he could feel it in his throat. He spotted a narrow dirt road up ahead and yanked the wheel, turning sharply onto it. The SUV fishtailed, mud flying, but they stayed upright. The chase continued through the dark, twisting road. Branches slapped against the sides of the vehicle, scraping the paint. But Richard didn't care. All that mattered was putting distance between them and the men behind. Then out of nowhere, a figure stepped into the road ahead. Richard slammed the brakes, the SUV skidding sideways until it stopped just a few feet away. The figure was Eleanor. Richard's jaw dropped. "How the hell—" She yanked the passenger door open and climbed in, breathing hard, her hair sticking to her face. "Drive!" she shouted. Richard didn't argue. He hit the gas again. "How did you—" "Don't ask," she cut him off. "Eyes on the road." Another burst of gunfire echoed behind them. Elena turned in her seat and fired back through the shattered rear window. Richard could see the muzzle flashes light up the inside of the SUV. Lucas was crying now, covering his head with both hands. "It's okay, buddy," Richard said, though his voice was shaking. One of the pursuing SUVs hit a bump and swerved wildly before crashing into a tree. The explosion lit up the night for a split second, giving Richard a clear view of Elena's face. She wasn't scared. She was focused. "Keep driving straight," she ordered. "There's an underpass ahead. We can lose them there." Richard followed her instructions, speeding toward the underpass. The last SUV stayed on their tail, its headlights blinding them. "Faster," Elena urged. Richard's foot pressed harder on the gas. The SUV roared forward, the underpass coming into view like a dark tunnel. As they entered, Elena leaned out the window and fired again. This time, Richard heard the pursuing SUV's tires blow out. The vehicle behind them skidded, spun, and flipped onto its side with a deafening crash. Silence followed, except for the sound of Richard's ragged breathing. "Don't stop," Elena said, still scanning the road behind them. "We're not safe yet." Richard swallowed hard, gripping the wheel. The adrenaline was still surging through his veins, but there was something else now, an uncomfortable realization. This woman, the maid he hadn't trusted for a second, had just saved their lives twice in less than an hour. And somehow he knew this wasn't over. The SUV tore through the dark back roads, every bump in the road jarring Richard's grip on the wheel. His mind was spinning as fast as the tires, the men, the attack, Elena's skills. None of this made sense. "Where do I go?" Richard asked, his voice tight. "Left up ahead," Elena said, still looking behind them, pistol in hand. "There's an abandoned service road. They won't follow us there." Richard took the turn hard. The SUV skidded, but he kept control, his palms slick with sweat. Lucas was curled up in the back seat, still shaking. "Lucas, buddy, you okay?" Richard asked, glancing back. Lucas nodded weakly, but didn't speak. The road ahead grew narrower, swallowed by trees. Richard slowed just enough to avoid losing control. Finally, Elena said, "Stop here." Richard hit the brakes, the SUV jerking to a halt. The night was quiet. Too quiet. "What now?" Richard asked. "We wait," Elena said, her voice low. "For what?" "For them to show up." Richard stared at her. "Are you insane? You want to just sit here?" "They won't stop," she said calmly, almost coldly. "If we run forever, they'll keep coming. We have to end this tonight." Richard's gut twisted. "You're talking like you've done this before." Elena finally turned to face him. Her expression was unreadable. "I have." Before he could respond, headlights appeared in the distance. Elena's jaw tightened. "They found us." She opened the door and stepped out, moving toward the front of the SUV with the pistol ready. Richard got out too, his heart hammering. "What are you doing?" "Stay behind the car," Elena said sharply, "and keep Lucas down." The headlights grew closer until the black SUV screeched to a stop just a few yards away. Two men jumped out, rifles raised. Elena didn't wait for them to speak. She fired first. The night exploded into chaos gunfire, echoing through the trees, sparks flying as bullets hit the SUV. Richard grabbed Lucas and ducked behind the car, shielding him with his own body. "Dad!" Lucas cried, tears streaming down his face. "It's okay. Stay down." Richard peeked around the bumper just in time to see Elena drop one of the men with a single shot. The other man dove behind his vehicle, firing back. Richard's heart pounded. This wasn't just a maid. Whoever she really was, she knew exactly what she was doing. Suddenly, a third figure stepped out from the SUV, a tall man in a dark coat, his face partially hidden by the shadows. He didn't have a gun. "Eleanor," he called out, his voice calm but carrying authority. "It doesn't have to end like this." Elena froze for half a second, her pistol aimed at him. Richard's stomach sank. "You know him," he said, realizing it instantly. Her jaw tightened. "Yeah," she said, without taking her eyes off the man. "I know him." "Then what is going on?" Richard demanded. Elena didn't answer. The man stepped closer. "Put the gun down. You can still come back. This isn't your fight anymore." Elena's grip on the pistol didn't waver. "You shouldn't have come near the boy," she said, her voice low, dangerous. "You crossed the line." Then it happened so fast, Richard almost missed it. The man raised a small gun from inside his coat and fired straight at Richard and Lucas. Richard had no time to react. Eleanor moved first. She threw herself in front of them. The shot rang out, echoing through the night. Eleanor stumbled, clutching her side, but stayed standing long enough to return fire. Her bullet hit the man square in the chest. He went down instantly. The other attacker bolted into the trees, disappearing into the dark. Richard caught Eleanor as she collapsed against the SUV, her breathing shallow but steady. "You're safe," she whispered, blood on her lips. Richard's throat tightened. "Why would you do that?" She gave a faint, almost tired smile. "Because protecting him was the job, not cleaning floors." For the first time in months, Richard didn't see her as a stranger. He saw her as the person who had just saved his son's life. Far off in the distance, sirens wailed. Reinforcements were coming. Richard held Lucas close with one arm and kept pressure on Elena's wound with the other. For once, the billionaire who trusted no one finally understood what trust really meant. The end. Please like and subscribe for more rich stories like this. Comment below. Let us know in the comments section where you are watching from and what time you are currently watching this video. Also, if you really love this video and want to support the channel directly, you can hit that super thanks button below.